A full colonel in the back seat of a Strike Eagle, a 7,000 foot ascent in enemy territory, and 2 scuttled C-130 aircraft. The math simply does not add up, unless you understand the classified reality of what went wrong in the Iranian mountains. Today, we strip away the AI-generated fluff to analyze the brutal tactical truth of this rescue mission behind enemy lines. Forget the Hollywood narrative of a miracle hike, while headlines focus on one colonel's climb on a broken leg in Iran. The real story is buried in the wreckage of 9 U.S. aircraft lost in just 48 hours during this chaotic rescue operation. Was this a heroic rescue? Or the most expensive tactical disaster in modern CSAR history for the United States military? We are performing a deep dive AAR, an after-action review, to expose the strategic cost of bringing one man home alive. This was a Pyrrhic victory, where the price of success nearly outweighed the value of the objective in the rugged terrain. Prepare for a cold analysis of tactical failures, scuttled assets, and the geopolitical trap set by the IRGC forces. We will look past the propaganda to see how Iran turned a simple recovery into a massive attrition trap for U.S. aviation. Beyond the survival story lies a web of military secrets, where every decision made in the dark carried $1 million price. We must ask why the Pentagon would risk so much for one officer, and what that reveals about the high stakes of this mission. Every piece of equipment left behind tells a different story than the one shared by officials, and we intend to find every gap, from the F-15E Strike Eagle crash site to the scuttled C-130 hulls. The trail of destruction is much longer than anyone admits. On Friday, April treered, at roughly 7 a.m. local time, over southwestern Iran. An F-15E Strike Eagle was struck by a missile. The impact occurred in seconds, forcing both the pilot and the weapons systems officer to eject into the high mountain air. This was no ordinary crew, as the man in the back seat was a full U.S. Air Force colonel, a rank rarely seen on combat sorties. Standard directives usually keep such high-ranking officers away from direct engagement. Yet here he was in the heart of Iran. His presence as a WSO raises massive questions about the nature of the mission, perhaps involving sensitive nuclear intelligence. If he possessed classified data or specialized knowledge of Iranian assets, his capture would be a catastrophic blow to U.S. security. The IRGC immediately placed a $60,000 bounty on his head, knowing exactly how valuable this high-value target really was. As the 2 parachutes drifted apart in the wind, the pilot landed in an accessible zone, but the colonel disappeared into the peaks. He was left alone with a pistol, a radio, and a beacon, nursing injuries that would have stopped any lesser man in his tracks. The spinal compression from the ejection was severe, yet he moved away from the wreckage to avoid the immediate search patterns. We have to wonder if he was carrying more than just survival gear, perhaps hardware that needed to be kept from enemy hands. This mystery is the core of why the entire U.S. military apparatus was mobilized to perform a rescue at such a staggering cost. Every minute he spent on that mountain increased the risk of a strategic leak that could alter the balance of power in the region. The hunt was on, not just for a downed aviator, but for a man who likely held the keys to America's most guarded secrets in Iran. This was a race against time, where the winner would control the narrative of the war and the fate of a highly sensitive operation. The claim that a wounded pilot climbed 7,000 feet on a broken leg is a physiological miracle that defies logic. In the thin mountain air of southwestern Iran, even elite athletes struggle to gain that much altitude without a heavy pack. Add to this the spinal compression and soft tissue damage caused by a high-speed ejection from a supersonic F-15E Strike jet. The official report suggests he hiked 5 miles in the dark, navigating rock crevices and steep cliffs while actively bleeding. Experts in SERE training know that moving away from the wreckage is a core rule, but this ascent is beyond human limits. We must consider the possibility that he had help from local civilians or a clandestine ground team already in place. Some witnesses on social media mentioned Iranian civilians blocking IRGC convoys, which might have bought him some time. Without such intervention, A man in his condition would likely have succumbed to shock or exposure within the first few hours. The narrative of a solo survival trek serves the heroic image well, but it ignores the brutal reality of the Iranian landscape. This specific region is known for jagged limestone and unpredictable winds that make every step a life-threatening gamble. By framing this as a lone feat of endurance, the military might be covering up a much more complex network of ground support. We are looking at a story designed for the big screen, rather than a factual account of tactical movement in hostile territory. If we analyze the 3D maps of the Lali region, the vertical gain mentioned in the briefing seems almost impossible for one man. The discrepancy between his reported physical state and the distance covered suggests a significant gap in the official timeline. It is more likely that he found a secure hide site early on and waited for the rescue package to close the distance to him. Whatever the truth, the 7,000-foot climb remains the most contested part of this entire survival story in the media. Military survival manuals emphasize finding a hide site that offers both concealment and a clear line of sight for signal bursts. The colonel likely followed his training to the letter, but the physical exertion described feels like pure Hollywood fiction. One must wonder if the 5-mile figure was inflated to justify the long delay in the arrival of the first recovery helicopters. If he was truly at 7,000 feet, the thermal signature of his body would have been easy for a Reaper drone to identify. Yet the search took over 30 hours, suggesting he was either much better hidden or the drones were busy with other targets. The local terrain in Khuzestan province is a maze of canyons and ridges that could hide an entire army from overhead surveillance. For a single man to navigate this without modern climbing gear while nursing a broken leg is a story for the history books. We should also look at the weather reports from that night, which indicated freezing temperatures and high winds at that altitude. Survival in these conditions requires more than just willpower. It requires equipment that a downed pilot simply does not carry. The gap between the official military briefing and the laws of physics is where the real story of this mission is currently hiding. The colonel's survival depended on a small device called the Combat Survivor Evader Locator, or CSAL, made by Boeing. This piece of tech is built to withstand the violent forces of a supersonic ejection and start working the moment it hits air. Unlike traditional radios, the CSEL does not use voice communication because vocal signals are too easy for Iran to track. Instead, it sends out short encrypted bursts of data that look like background noise to the IRGC electronic warfare units. These bursts contain precise location data and status updates, like injured or moving, directly to the military satellites above. By using frequency hopping signals, the device remains invisible to the sophisticated tracking systems used by Iranian forces. The colonel had to show immense discipline by only activating the beacon in very short intervals to minimize his digital footprint. Every transmission was a calculated risk that could lead the enemy right to his rock crevice at 7,000 feet in the dark. This silent tether connected him to the entire U.S. military rescue network, from the White House to the local SEAL teams. Without this technology, the search would have been a blind flight into the unknown, likely ending in a tragic capture or death. The precision of the CSEL allowed the rescue package to lock onto his position within a few meters of his actual hiding spot. It was this digital thread that kept the hope of recovery alive during the long 36 hours of isolation in hostile hills. We must recognize that this was a high-stakes game of hide-and-seek played out across the electromagnetic spectrum over Iran. The survival of the colonel was not just a physical feat, but a victory for American engineering in a contested environment. Even with such advanced gear, the human element was the deciding factor, as the officer had to remain calm while being hunted. Every time he pressed that button, he was gambling with his life, hoping the U.S. satellites were listening in the vastness of space. The CSEL is the unsung hero of this operation, providing the only reliable link between a broken man and his distant commanders. The data collected by these devices will later be analyzed to improve the stealth of future rescue operations in denied airspace. Information gathered from this device helped the command center understand the exact topography of the mountain where he was hiding. This technical advantage was the only thing that gave the rescue crews a chance to plan their approach without being detected early. The interplay between human endurance and satellite communication created a window of opportunity that the IRGC could not easily close. While the colonel hid in his crevice, a parallel intelligence operation was unfolding within the Iranian borders. The CIA launched a massive deception campaign to confuse the IRGC search teams and buy precious hours. They spread rumors through human intelligence networks that U.S. forces had already secured the pilot in a convoy. This phantom ground convoy became the primary target for Iranian intelligence, drawing their units far from the peaks. Informants and double agents inside the region began reporting false sightings of American commandos moving south. The IRGC leadership shifted their heavy assets toward the roads, leaving the mountain ridge less defended. This strategic misdirection is what created the narrow window for the actual CSAR package to begin its approach. Without this shadow game, the CSAR mission would have faced a concentrated wall of Iranian surface-to-air fire. It was a masterclass in psychological warfare, turning the enemy's own network against their tactical objectives. The colonel remained invisible to the Iranian eyes, shielded by a layer of lies manufactured in Langley offices. Every false report sent to the Basij militia was another minute of life for the man waiting in the cold crevice. By the time Tehran realized they were chasing ghosts, the elite rescue units were already crossing the border. This deception was not just about saving one man, it was about proving that the U.S. could manipulate Iranian intel. HUMINT assets played a vital role in this operation, providing the cover necessary for the final extraction. The extraction itself was only possible because the Iranian response was fractured and directed at false targets. This layer of the mission is often overlooked, yet it remains the most sophisticated part of the rescue attempt. Tactical success in the air is often the result of brilliance on the ground, specifically in the world of shadows. While the world watched the skies, the real battle for time was won through whispers and coded radio transmissions. The CIA proved once again that information is just as lethal as a missile when deployed with surgical precision. This hidden campaign effectively paralyzed the Iranian high command during the most critical hours of the event. The Iranian intelligence agencies were led to believe that the pilot had been smuggled out through a mountain pass. They mobilized entire battalions to secure the western border, thinking they were about to catch a major prize. This massive movement of troops created a vacuum of surveillance around the actual landing zone of the aircraft. Such a strategic decoy requires months of preparation, showing the depth of American influence inside the region. Every sensor and every radar station was being fed contradictory data, leading to total chaos within the network. In this case, the environment was shaped by the absence of the pilot, who remained perfectly still in his hide. The IRGC was essentially fighting a ghost, wasting their limited resources on a threat that never even existed. This allows the CSAR teams to operate with a degree of freedom that would otherwise be impossible in Iran. The success of the deception campaign is a testament to the coordination between military and civil agencies. It shows that a rescue mission is never just about flying fast. It is about controlling what the enemy thinks. While the colonel was physically injured, his safety was secured by the mental agility of his distant handlers. The cost of such an operation is measured in millions, but the tactical advantage it provides is truly priceless. We must look at this as a game of chess where the Americans were playing 3 moves ahead of the Iranian guard. The shadow game was the foundation upon which the entire rescue package was built during those 36 hours. Even the most advanced stealth aircraft would have struggled without the distractions provided by the CIA. This is the invisible front of modern warfare, where the narrative is just as important as the kinetic action. By the time the sun rose over the mountains, the Iranian forces were miles away from the real rescue perimeter. The colonel could hear the distant sounds of the IRGC search parties moving further away into the deep valley. This silence was his greatest ally, gifted to him by the operatives working in the shadows of the Iranian state. Now we begin the cold after-action review of the massive attrition suffered by U.S. aviation forces during this rescue. The official story often ignores the heavy price paid in hardware, but the list of hull losses is truly staggering to see. An AT's Warthog, providing low-altitude overwatch for the colonel, was reportedly struck by Iranian ground fire and lost. This tank killer was meant to be the shield for the rescue team, but it became another casualty in the Iranian mountains. Then we must look at the first C-130 Combat King, a massive transport aircraft that attempted to land on the soft dirt. The nose gear of this heavy lifter got stuck in the treacherous terrain, rendering the multi-million-dollar plane immobile. This was not just a mechanical failure. It was a tactical nightmare that trapped 100 special forces on the ground. With an A-10 down and a C-130 stuck, the rescue mission was rapidly turning into a disaster for the American commanders. The IRGC forces were closing in on the crash site of the A-10, hoping to capture yet another American pilot in the dark. Every airframe lost represents a gap in the air cover that the colonel desperately needed to survive his long ordeal. The C-130 Combat King is a specialized asset for CSAR missions, and losing one is a significant blow to global readiness. These initial losses were only the beginning of a chain reaction that would eventually claim 9 different U.S. aircraft. We see a pattern of desperation as the U.S. military threw more assets into the fray to prevent a total strategic failure. The cost of the A-10 and the specialized C-130 alone runs into the tens of millions of dollars before even counting the fuel. This level of attrition is unheard of for a single rescue, highlighting the extreme danger of operating inside Iranian air. The loss of the A-10 meant that ground troops had to rely on high-altitude bombers, which are less effective for close support. Iranian mobile air defenses were clearly more capable than the initial U.S. intelligence reports had originally suggested. This forced a change in the entire flight profile for all following aircraft, adding layers of complexity to the operation. One must ask if the terrain was properly surveyed before risking such expensive assets on an unproven landing strip in Iran. The recovery of the A-10 pilot became a secondary mission that further strained the already stretched rescue resources. The second C-130 Combat King attempted a rescue of the first crew, but its nose gear also became stuck in the soft Iranian soil. This double failure forced the U.S. military to make a hard choice to scuttle both massive transport planes on the ground. An MH-6 Little Bird helicopter was also lost during the chaotic extraction phase, adding another airframe to the growing list. High-altitude surveillance was not spared, as an MQ-9 Reaper and a Hermes 900 drone were both confirmed as shot down by Iran. 2 Black Hawk helicopters managed to lunge back to base despite taking heavy fire that left them riddled with bullet holes. This attrition rate of 9 aircraft in 48 hours is the highest the United States has seen in a single search and rescue event. The decision to blow up the C-130 hulls was necessary to prevent sensitive navigation and communication tech from being captured. Each explosion of $100 to $1 million aircraft echoed across the valley, marking a deep tactical wound for the rescue task force. The sheer number of lost assets suggests that the Iranian air defense network was much more integrated than previously believed. This was a brutal reminder that even the most advanced stealth technology cannot always overcome a determined and well-armed enemy. We must view these losses not as isolated accidents, but as a systematic dismantling of the rescue perimeter by the IRGC forces. Every scuttled plane and every downed drone represents a significant loss of strategic capability that will take years to fully replace. The loss of the Hermes 900 drone is particularly notable, as it is a high-end asset often used for deep tactical reconnaissance. Ground teams reported seeing the glow of the burning wreckage from miles away, illuminating the dark peaks of the Khuzestan province. The Tactical Air Control Party had to manage a shrinking fleet of assets while the enemy continued to launch shoulder-fired missiles. This level of hardware destruction turns the survival story into a case study on the limits of modern air power in contested zones. Military analysts are still debating if the reward of saving one colonel justified the loss of an entire tactical squadron of planes. The Iranian military claimed that they successfully neutralized several high-value targets before the American Special Forces could exit. Smoke from the 2 scuttled transport planes created a thick black cloud that was visible on satellite imagery for several days after. This operation serves as a warning that the age of easy air superiority is coming to an end in the face of modern anti-air batteries. Each piece of twisted metal left in the Iranian mountains is a testament to the high stakes of modern combat search and rescue missions. The recovery element from SEAL Team 6, known as Devgru, moved into the jagged Iranian ridges under the cover of total darkness. They established a temporary staging base on Iranian soil, a move that placed elite U.S. operators within striking distance of the enemy. Overhead, the MQ-9 Reaper drones maintained a lethal close protection perimeter, engaging any IRGC units within 3 kilometers. Individual movements in the valley were identified by thermal sensors, then cleared for engagement by the remote drone operators. This meant the Reapers were actively killing Iranian soldiers who got too close to the colonel's hide position in real time that night. The SEALs had to navigate vertical rock faces while carrying heavy gear, all while avoiding the watchful eyes of local Iranian scouts. Sniper fire echoed through the canyons as the elite Navy operators traded shots with IRGC border guards near the extraction zone. Tactical coordination between the ground teams and the air cover was the only thing preventing a complete encirclement of the small base. Every minute on the ground increased the risk of an Iranian counterattack, forcing the SEALs to execute a lightning-fast combat egress. The staging base was a calculated gamble, turning a search mission into a full-scale ground battle deep inside a hostile sovereign nation. Despite the chaos, the recovery team reached the colonel, performing a quick medical assessment before moving him toward the chopper. This was not a silent extraction, but a violent fight for survival, where every bullet fired was a step toward a hard, strategic victory. The IRGC convoys attempting to reach the ridge were struck by Hellfire missiles, creating a ring of fire around the rescue site area. Communication between the ground and the air remained encrypted, ensuring that the Iranian military could not jam the rescue signal. The professionalism of the 150th Special Operations Aviation Regiment was on full display as they hovered in the dangerous crosswinds. Special Operations forces stayed vigilant as they loaded the injured WSO onto the Little Bird, ignoring the tracers flying past them. The fight on the ground was a desperate attempt to hold the line while the extraction helicopters worked to lift the team off the mountain. Every operator knew that a single mistake would lead to a hostage situation that would have far-reaching effects on global politics. The bravery shown by the SEALs was matched by the precision of the pilots who flew into a literal wall of anti-aircraft fire over Iran. They were prepared to die for a man they had never met, driven by the core ethos of the U.S. military that no one is ever left behind. Iranian casualties were reported to be high, as the elite American forces used their superior night vision to dominate the rocky battlefield. This engagement proved that the U.S. can project power even in the most denied environments, provided the cost of hardware is secondary. The SEALs utilized specialized explosive charges to clear obstacles on the path, creating a diversion that confused the IRGC scouts. Night vision goggles provided the Americans with a massive advantage over the Iranian forces, who were often firing blindly into the dark. Each member of the rescue team was a veteran of multiple combat tours, bringing a level of experience that is unmatched in modern warfare. As the colonel was secured, the focus shifted to the extraction of the ground team and the destruction of any sensitive gear left on site. The coordination of this ground battle will be studied by military academies for decades as a prime example of high-stakes CSAR events. The decision to blow up 2 multi-million-dollar C-130 aircraft on Iranian soil was a painful necessity for the U.S. commanders. Each C-130 Combat King carries highly classified communication suites and navigation hardware that cannot fall into enemy hands. As the sun began to rise over the Khuzestan province, the order was given to scuttle the immobile planes using high-yield explosives. The total cost of this single rescue mission is estimated to exceed $300 million, a staggering figure for one man. This amount represents the entire annual operating budget for some tactical fighter squadrons, highlighting the extreme financial toll beyond the money. The loss of these specialized airframes creates a significant gap in the global CSAR readiness of the Air Force. Strategic prestige was also at stake, as the burning wreckage of American planes became a propaganda victory for the IRGC forces. We must ask if the value of one WSO, even a full colonel, truly justifies the destruction of such critical national defense assets. The Pentagon often uses the phrase "no one left behind" to justify these costs. But the internal AAR will likely be much more critical. Every piece of shrapnel left behind is a reminder that air superiority comes with a price tag that few nations can actually afford. The economic impact of scuttling these aircraft will be felt across the entire defense supply chain for several years to come, surely. While the pilot is home, the financial wreckage remains as a testament to the risks taken in the name of military loyalty and honor. Tactical bombers were used to ensure that not a single piece of salvageable technology remained after the ground teams had departed. This act of self-destruction was a clear signal that the US would rather burn their own gold than let Iran study their latest gear. Such a massive loss of high-value equipment is rare in a single operation, making this one of the most expensive CSAR events ever. Financial analysts point out that the cost per minute for this operation was higher than most small-scale wars in recent history. The political fallout of this $300 million price tag will likely result in a series of intense hearings in Washington. This serves as a brutal reminder that the most advanced military in the world is still vulnerable to the simple laws of gravity and dirt. Every tactical decision has a massive financial consequence, and this mission proves that the price of honor is often measured in billions. The charred remains of the transport planes will stay in those mountains as a silent witness to a very expensive night for the Air Force. The geopolitical fallout from this mission is still being felt across the Middle East as Iran claims a victory against US technology. While the colonel is safely back on American soil, the sight of burning C-130 aircraft in the mountains is a powerful image for Tehran. The message from the White House is clear that no cost is too high to bring a soldier home. But the cost here was truly astronomical. Military analysts suggest that this operation exposed critical vulnerabilities in the ways the US Air Force conducts deep rescue tasks. The Iranian state media has used the wreckage to mock the perceived invincibility of American special operations and aviation units. There is an ongoing debate within the Pentagon regarding the safety of high-ranking officers flying combat missions over hostile zones. The Iranian IRGC has likely recovered fragments of the scuttled planes, potentially gaining small insights into US stealth materials. Future CSAR missions will likely be forced to adapt to a world where even the most remote terrain is monitored by enemy sensors. The survival of the WSO is a victory for the human spirit, but the loss of 9 aircraft is a sobering reality for modern warfare. Every pilot who straps into a jet tonight is thinking about the 36 hours the colonel spent alone in those jagged mountains. The mystery of what he was doing in that Strike Eagle will continue to fuel theories about the true nature of the mission in Iran. We may never know the full extent of the intelligence that was saved, but the price paid on the ground was undeniably very steep. Iranian officials have already begun to display the captured drone parts, turning a tactical standoff into a public relations win. As the dust settles in the Khuzestan province, the world wonders what the next chapter of this silent war will eventually look like. Speculation about the colonel's identity continues to grow as the Air Force keeps his name and his specific squadron details classified. Some experts believe he was part of a specialized unit that evaluates enemy air defenses from the perspective of high-level command. His presence in the back seat suggests he was not just flying, but observing a tactical environment of extreme national importance. If he was indeed carrying specialized hardware or encryption keys, his rescue was not just a humanitarian act, but a necessity. The secrecy surrounding his medical recovery in Kuwait further supports the theory that this was more than a standard mission. Every detail that remains hidden only adds to the legend of the man who survived 36 hours in the heart of the enemy territory. The aftermath of this operation will be studied for years, as it redefined the boundaries of risk in modern combat search and rescue. While the financial cost was immense, the message sent to the world was that the United States will never leave its high-value assets behind. This mission serves as both a warning to adversaries and a testament to the lengths the military will go to protect its own secrets. As the smoke clears over the Iranian mountains, the true story of that night remains one of the most intriguing mysteries in aviation history.